Hey everyone, welcome to the stream. Um, so my name is Paul Deasy. I'm a character modeler working in the animation industry. And the last stream we were working on Hellboy. So we had done which you can still watch back on the channel as well, on Pixologic's channel, where we had done the block out of the head and worked into the head. Um, let's see. This is the concept that we had. So what I was thinking for this week was to maybe block out the body a little bit and just show you how I go about doing that. Because it's only a bust, but I quite like the head, so I might actually just go with a full character for it down the line. So it'd be nice to get the whole body in and do like some sort of cool pose, maybe even make his gun. You get to make his big rock hand, and I'm a massive fan of the character, so, and I've never made a Hellboy, so I'm thinking it's about time. So we've got a large amount of the torso, pretty much where I want it to be. I'm not going super, like, I'll be going pretty stylized with it. So, but we're still very much in the blockout stage. Just a sec. There we go. Need some background music. That's something actually I was wondering, because I know some of the streamers they have background music, and I always think, like, if I use background music, that kind of means if you want to have your own music on the side and you can still hear me talk, then you can do that. Where if I have music playing, if you want to listen to music while watching the stream or whatever, it means you have to mute me entirely, which you may not, well, maybe you want to do that, but maybe not necessarily either. So let me know in the comments, sure, if you'd prefer having some background music on the stream. That was my thoughts on it to begin with anyway, that I'd leave it to you guys to play your own music, because I kind of see these streams like kind of keeping each other company while we're sculpting or whatever, which I quite like, and having a bit of a chat, and maybe along the line learning a few bits. That one doesn't, so here I always just grab some primitives rather than trying to grab a primitive in the shape I need. I always just grab spheres, just pull it into the shape I need. I find it much quicker. I haven't really decided how much I want to break this up. Something that I want to do this year is really get back into, like, last year I did like some mentoring and I did streams and I did like I want to do a tutorial this year. Alex F1, how's it going? Lemon card, thank you very much. Alright, so Artazetia, Zete, that's solidly if people have their own music then different, yeah, exactly. So okay, so that's one vote towards leaving the music off the stream itself. But yeah, so I want to do a tutorial this year where I'll break down the process that I use to do sculpts, like the steps. But so that's one of my goals for the year, is to do at least one tutorial. But another one for me this year, I think it was actually mentioned something about this on the last stream, was that I want to get back to actually proactively learning myself, because I didn't do enough of that last year or the year before. You know, you're always learning, and I've done, like, I did tons of sculpts in that time, and you learn from even just that alone. But really, like, it's very important to keep, you're never, you know, just say because you have a job in the industry or whatever and you're getting paid to do it now doesn't mean, oh, I can stop, I don't need to learn anymore, I've learned enough. You always need to, there's no such thing as I've learned all of it, so you're never above it, kind of. And this year is hopefully going to be an educational one for me, or that's the idea. And on everything, like, I know I wouldn't say I'm not like you know, there's some artists out there that know anatomy like the back of their hand, no pun intended. They know every muscle, and they know exactly where it connects and how it connects, and they can, like, basically just do an entire anatomical sculpt essentially out of their head. I'm not one of those artists. Like, I have a good understanding of anatomy, I'd say, but like that, like, there's always room for improvement. There's plenty of room for improvement on my anatomy, and so just doing a little bit of that. Like, I'm working on a sculpt now at the moment. I shared it on my Instagram. It's of like a girl in like almost a crucifixion pose, almost like her ankles are crossed and her arms are not completely out but out a little bit, her head's all tilted, and you know, I went into the anatomy on that intentionally. The point was, like, I chose to go that route because I wanted to do something with anatomy, and I didn't just want to, I wasn't really in the humour of just doing a sculpt of like a study. I wanted to do, I was in the humour of doing something fun, but I knew I wanted to do that too, so I just incorporated the both into one, and decided on an idea where the anatomy will be part of it. And actually, in the end, like, I developed the design to a point where more of the body is covered than initially, but I still worked on the anatomy underneath and got kind of in depth, or at least more than I usually would, more than the style that I work in usually would call for, you know. And I'm not trying to get better at anatomy just so that I can do a different style or anything. But I've said it before about anatomy is, regardless of whether you are doing like super stylized or whatever, anatomy is very, very important because it drives it's a fundamental knowledge that you need to have that drives design. So it's super, super important. I'll pull this over just to make sure you can hear me okay. I know the old wire was hitting it last week. Do Z-remesh at same option of polys every time as you go? No, I generally keep it as long as it's relatively low. I just need it relatively low. The exact number doesn't really matter, so I'll glance up at it, and if it's down towards the end of the bar, it'll do me. Do you know what I mean? I just need something that I can easily push around and smooth. That's the really actually important part of keeping it low poly, is when you smooth or all smooth, you'll get a nice smooth surface. It'll average out. Where if it's super high poly, smoothing doesn't do much. It's like smoothing micro details. It'll do that, but it won't smooth the entire surface. So that tends to be the way I look at it. I might actually break. I'm gonna leave it like that for now, but I might actually break the arms, like I said, to get into a bit more anatomy. I might actually keep these like that for now as a general silhouette-ish, but later go in and actually break them up further. Let's just use this. That's something I find also helps a lot with just speeding things up a little bit. Not because I'm in a rush, but just because, you know, the simple things, if I can make them quick and easy, and that way I don't have to worry about them so much. You know, I can focus on the big things. And I have my, always important, I have my, because I can't see my camera. There we go. I have my anatomy book out, which is Anatomy for Sculptors. Really good book. So that's always good to have out for reference. But yeah, little things like that. I use a lot. Like I do focus on speed, but not necessarily because I just want to be really fast, which is helpful in like when you're working, for sure. But to a point, because like in my experience, most professionals, you know, they take as long as they take, and the production side of things will respect that for the most part. And I know it's not always the case, and I've probably been relatively lucky, although, you know, we've all been rushed, but generally speaking, you know, if you say, look, this is not going to be done by the end of the day, I don't have enough time, then they'll respect that. So it is important for production, but it's not my primary reason for speeding up. My primary reason for speeding up is not necessarily about time. It's just about the bits that you know, time spent in menus and things that I don't necessarily, I want to be here involved in the sculpt all the time. So when I create shortcut keys or come up with like end up doing things like that, like copying chunks of the body for other parts of the body and stuff, I'm not doing it because I want to be faster for production. I'm doing it because I don't want to be spending time in menus and or keeping it to a minimum at least. So I want to, so here what I'm doing is I'm kind of thinking of this curve across the torso, and then thinking about how I can use that in the body, or sorry, in the leg I should say. So it's just a case of like seeing how I can continue. And I can break it slightly. Of course, I don't have to have completely clean lines all the time. But that's what we're aiming for here. It's just as in, I'm not necessarily thinking about trying to make these just singular clean lines, which is the case sometimes. You know, like for example, you could, instead of having this go have a curve up, and then you'll have a bit of a hit here, and then it curves out here, and then here what you could do, and then like straighter here, like you could think of this by like curling this in and turning this into more of an S, and then keeping this like this, and then pulling that back a little bit. And you see, compared to this, you get what? Sorry. I thought I turned symmetry off. You get a much more. You get a very definite curve there, a definite flow. So I am, even though I'm not being that literal with it, I still am thinking of like the flow of the lines in the shapes. Have you ever done a life drawing session in ZBrush? No, I haven't actually. That would be interesting, I guess, actually. I've done life drawing with clay, but I've never done it in ZBrush. That would be interesting. There's a little business idea. I've never heard of that. Anyone doing that? That could definitely be interesting. Hey Emma, how are you keeping? Emmy the geek in from the old job. Hope you're keeping well, Emser. So yeah, that's something that I think a lot of more kind of amateur level sculptors tend to miss, is getting a nice flow in their forms. But it's hard to think about flow when you haven't kind of you know, when something like anatomy or a real fundamental thing like that, still you still haven't really gotten a good grip of it yet. So it does happen a lot. I do see it a lot, but you shouldn't be frustrated. Like it will. It's learning is like learning has a momentum to it. The more you learn, the faster you learn. To a point, like I mean, when you're at that level, when you're at a beginner level, obviously, then when you start to get to a higher level, things will slow down because things tend to slow down because for potentially because now that you're after getting to a good level, that maybe you're getting paid and you're doing cool jobs and all that type of stuff, your motivation for being better is less now. You don't have any necessarily real world reasons. At that point, the only reason to get better is because you love doing it and you want to be, it's just in you that you want to be better and better, I guess. And the other reason is, I suppose, because the better you get, the harder the lessons are to master as you go down, because you're learning more difficult aspects. But I always find with a lot of people who are starting out that they get it's like this is a long period of like they're not really getting it, and then one day something clicks and they jump, they get way better all of a sudden, and then another thing clicks and they jump again, and another thing clicks and they jump again. And the reason is because you've got like 5 categories of things that you need to learn, and they all work together to make something appealing. So you've got like bits and bobs, got like 20% of this one and 60% of this one and 40% of this one, and in order to master one, or in order to get much better at one, you need a better understanding of the other. So suddenly you get to this suddenly one day it's like, oh, okay, I've learned that thing now, and now those a number of other things make more sense now, and that's why you take a leap, because it's like this click effect. I certainly found that myself when I was a tad bit younger. I was in college and stuff. Good to be fluid when sculpting rather than sprint. Yeah, you shouldn't be in a rush unless you have a specific reason to be in a rush. But that's where like that comes in handy as well. You know, like I know Emma would remember there. We used to do in my old job. We used to do the end of every second week or something. We'd have an hour just to sculpt whatever, and some of us would sculpt the same thing, and from the same concept or whatever. And I found that was actually really good, because it made me like, okay, you've got an hour to get the most done. And my life drawing came back and was like, all right, look for the important lines, what makes the most impact, what's really necessary. And with thinking that way, and then having like a good like workflow within ZBrush, where I can get to things quick, and I know just little weird little shortcuts that I have for myself, that I can do things a little bit quicker than I could originally. Is super helpful when it comes to that kind of thing. And it meant that meant I could do it like in an hour. I could get something like relatively appealing. That's why I'd be paranoid sometimes with the streams, because obviously with the streams it can be more difficult to work at speed, at any kind of speed, because talking and sculpting, because like sculpting is problem solving. Any sort of art like that is like constant, unrelenting problem solving. So trying to talk while you're doing it, it's not, I wouldn't say it's necessarily, I wouldn't call it difficult, but it certainly slows you down. Don't know, do I want to do it this way, but screw it. We're doing it. I'm after missing a bunch of stuff here. Sorry guys. See, can I get through it? Hi Paul, do you do realistic sculpt? A little bit sometimes. I used to do it all the time, and then I got more into stylized. I enjoy stylized more. I find it more interesting for me. Obviously that's a personal preference. I enjoy sculpting it more, and I enjoy myself the look more than doing realistic sculpts. But depending, sometimes I'll, you know, use kind of make realistic elements within a more stylized sculpt too. Strike the balance. Oh, whatever. I need to walk into that leg way more. I think stylized knowledge of anatomy. I think a stylized knowledge of anatomy is better. Well, I wouldn't say it's better. Because it's not. Neither are better. Like, if you never need to do stylized sculpts, then stylized anatomy is not really, like, stylized anatomy is like the same way you stylize any shape. In order to do it, you need to know what the original shape is. The problem that I see a lot is people look at other stylized characters and then they make their work based on other people's work rather than having any of the information themselves and being able to understand where that stylization came from originally, and therefore how to come up with their own shapes. Like, for sure, seeing other people's work, and you can be inspired by it, you can pull from it, and you should absolutely do that. Everyone does that, but you need to know yourself as well, or else all you're going to be doing is just copying the way other people are doing things, which is not going to be very. You're only ever going to be kind of like someone else, probably not as good, because that other person has a really strong grasp of the fundamentals. not to say you specifically, but just I mean people who tend to only learn stylized shape anatomy from looking at other people's work. There's no way around it. You need to learn your anatomy, your real anatomy. And doing like that ZBrush life drawn would be a great way to do that, in fact. Emma's saying, let's do it in your stream. Oh yeah, the hour thing. Yeah, that's a good idea. Could do like an hour stream and just see what. Yeah, that's a great idea. Definitely be up for that. I would love to see a live drawn session. ZBrush narrators. Watching a live drawn session on YouTube. Untitled ZBrush, yeah. How do you manage perspective and orthographic view when you sculpt? When to turn it on and off? I generally don't ever have orthographic on. I always work in perspective. What I do is I change the camera, which I haven't this time. I always change that to 85mm, because it's a bit more flat. It doesn't get as like warped when you get close. So that I use that mostly, and the only time I really use orthographic is if I need to like mask, like say if I wanted to mask the front of the leg, the front half of the leg there, I want to also mask the same place on the other leg. So if I do that, you know, in perspective like that, then you know it's masking across the other side and then mirroring that over here. It's a mess. So just turn orthographic off, snap it to the side and do it that way, or turn orthographic on. So and then go back to perspective and do whatever I need to do. So yeah, when I use it for a second and then I turn it back off again. I never work in orthographic. I'm just trying to catch up on a few things here, on a few of the comments here. So CADS 3D is asking, what's the ratio of learning and working in the industry would you like, and methods so you wouldn't put too much strain on the wrist? Ratio of learning and working in the industry. So I assume you mean the amount of time you put in after work, after you do your 8 hours working in the industry, and that is something that's very personal to whoever, because there's so many variables in any individual's life that would affect that, you know. So obviously your own drive is one thing that would certainly affected. You know, if you've got other there's other parts of your life that need attention too, they're gonna pull away. You know, for example, you know, friends and family and stuff like that, or you know, you gotta, how much time do you put into them versus your work, and these are hard things to balance, and they're really down to you and what you feel is appropriate to you. Some people, so like for me personally, like I'll do something every day outside of work. I usually work in the morning, so I'll at least work in the morning. So I used to always work in the evening, but last while I changed to doing it in the morning because I found that easier. So I work before everyone else is up and stuff. So I get up at 6, and that way I can work before I start like industry work, and I can get a few hours in. And in the evening, if I can't, it's okay because I've still, you know, I've got a good chunk of work done that day. But generally speaking, in the evening, especially now, there's not, you know, a whole lot to be doing in the evening time. I will also work after industry work. I'll you know, I'll have my dinner or whatever, and then I'll go back to working. But my rule there as well is that I work until about 8 o'clock. I won't go too long after 8 o'clock, because then I turn the computer off, and I kind of try to wind down then so I can sleep properly, because it's not even that I wouldn't necessarily be able to sleep, but I notice, you know, if I work too late, so say if I turned everything off at 8 and went to bed at 10:30, fell asleep and woke up the next morning, I'm great. If I work until 10:15 and then get into bed and fall asleep at 10:30 in the morning, I'm groggy. So it's not just when I went to sleep, it's how I went to sleep and what I did before that. So I'll do that, and you know, depends if I have something that I need to do, or someone that I'm seeing, or whatever the case may be in the evening, then that's why I've got my work done in the morning anyway, so no big deal. But I'll try to do every day, and when I do projects, I'll always try to incorporate something into the projects, especially now. Before, a little bit, like in the last year or two, I always did a little bit. I used to, like, the first thought in my head is, what do I need to learn? Then the second thought is, okay, what will I sculpt? So I'm that's what I'm trying to get back into, that kind of mentality. Because it was just a very productive way to work. So yeah, it's hard, you know. Some people are gonna find that more difficult to do, like exactly what I'm doing, for example, or you know, there's other people that do a lot more hours a day. I know a good friend of mine and a sculptor as well, and I don't want to say who, because it's kind of, I'm talking a little bit personal here, but about sleeping patterns, like, but he sleeps for 4 hours a night so that he can get more work done, and he knows that 4 hours a night isn't enough, and it's kind of it's unhealthy in the long term. It's bad for your memory and stuff. But for the meantime, that's what he does in order to. But he's like I would consider myself a relatively productive person, but well, until I'm not. But he's like the most productive, most like he's an artist, but he's also a businessman. He's a very inspiring guy to be around. But I think for me, I just don't think I have the same amount of drive that he has to be able to do that. I would 4 hours sleep. I'd be waking up every morning. Just I wouldn't be able to get out of bed. Couldn't do it. Hey Turbo Tsunami, thanks brother. You too. Or sister for that matter. Thanks Alex F1. I really love how clean your models are always. Cheers. Very useful book. Hold on. Yeah, I'll show you that again for anyone who didn't see it earlier. This is a great book. If you don't have it and you're sculpting ZBrush, you should have it. It's really, really good. So, it's Oldest Zarans and Sandis Kondrat's Anatomy for Sculptors. If you type in Anatomy for Sculptors, you'll find it. Great to see your process. Your work is great. Thanks a lot, Mark. Appreciate it. These legs are atrocious. I really need to do something with them. I knew I shouldn't have put that knee in. I think if anything, it's like distracting. It's weird looking. Why is that on there? There you go. So even like you see, he is obviously stylized, but where I'm placing, so for example, the elbow is about here in the arm. So if he puts his arms down straight, the idea is that they line up with the crease in the back. So the center of this crease in here. And then the idea with the hands is that the wrist lines up at the bottom of the crotch. Now, I've intentionally made his arms longer, and I may make them even longer than they are, because he's got that kind of ape type body shape. Because also he's not human. But even if he was human, you know, I could still do that. That's why I like stylized. Is like I know that that's how it should be, but I can push things a lot more, and I can take more artistic license with things in stylized, which is kind of why I personally kind of lost interest in doing more realistic sculpting. Because I just enjoy that so much with stylized, and I don't have as much of that opportunity with more realistic sculpting, so I don't really do it as much anymore. It's funny though, that's the second stream in a row I think that I was asked that. I'm wondering, are people hoping that I will do some more realistic sculpting, or maybe they're wondering, can I do more realistic sculpting? In which case I would say, yeah, like I can like I know anatomy, and I can go into more detail, do like skin pores and stuff. And I am, like, the other sculpt that I'm working on at the moment. I'll show you probably real quick. I'm actually, it's a whip, let's say. There's a bunch in and out of Maya as well, where I'm rendering her. So, like, I've got stylized shapes here. In terms of, it's not super stylized, but she does have, like, bigger eyes than a human usually would, and her head is bigger than a human's usually would in comparison to her body, and certain things are more slender than they'd usually be and stuff. But at the same time, it's doing this thing. Oh, okay. At the same time, going in and doing, like, the surface and detail on the lips and stuff, and the anatomy is relatively realistic. Like, the body's all torn up now because I've sculpted into it for the clothes, but this is when you compare, like, those legs to, well, maybe the legs are actually a terrible example, but you know what I mean. So depends. Sometimes I do go a little bit more realistic. I'll do like the gangster that I did and stuff. You can find it on my ArtStation and on my Instagram and stuff. I did a gangster called Roddy, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I think Roddy. Like, the wrinkles and stuff there are a bit more realistic that I did. So I like to kind of mix it up. I don't like to always thinking, like, just plainer edges and stuff, but sometimes I do. Sometimes I prefer to go, like, very much more volumes and rounded shapes, and then sometimes I like to get a bit more realistic and mix it up a little bit. It's I don't like to do the same thing for too long. I get bored very quickly. It's often, I'd say, actually, like, in terms of, like, gathering following and stuff like that, it probably hurts me, but there's a lot of artists, they have one particular thing that they do, and they become well known for that, and becomes, like, their little niche kind of thing, where I don't know, I feel like I'd burn out very quickly if I tried to do that. If I just stuck to one thing all the time. Ah, Spicer, how's it going, brother? Blockout's looking good. Hellboy is always fun to sculpt. Yeah, cheers, man. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining. Always a pleasure to have you in. Alex Gachanja, also get bored too easily. Yeah, it's a common thing. I think you're either, I don't know, some artists, it's like they just get obsessed with, like, a certain way of doing things, which isn't bad. They've learned a lot to get there, and they find this style that they just, it's almost like they can't get enough of, and they just always do it, and become, like, incredibly good at it, and do, like, super appealing work in that style, and become, like, super famous for it. But, like, I'd say it's still, like, you could argue, like, Loish, for example, is slightly like that. If you know Loish's work, I know maybe not everyone here would, because maybe some of you guys aren't really into the 2D end of things, but like just as an example of like a hyper famous artist that's got like a very distinctive style that she uses all the time, but she still like switches things up, you know what I mean? Like she's like all I've seen from Loish for a long time is characters and these girls in like these kind of whimsical backgrounds that weren't really anything. They weren't really a background. It was more like just a design. In a lot of cases, and then you know, she started doing these stunning. I think she's actually like going out and painting. She's using her iPad and painting from life on her iPad, and you know, but she's still using that style, but she's mixing it up that way. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to mix it up, but yeah, I don't know. I just I find you know, I know I am a stylized sculptor, but at the same time, I don't think that way. I don't always think like, okay, what can I do now in my style or whatever. I just kind of what do you work on mostly for your clients? Well, mostly I do just design sculpts. And then, but I've also, and then sometimes I'll do, you know, I'll do technical modeling as well for them. For my, cause, yeah, I just to be clear in what I'm saying here, like in work in the studio, I do design sculpts, and then I do retopo and you know, neutralizing the model and everything, and then doing blend shapes. I do all of that stuff like every day, but for clients generally I do design sculpts as in for freelance work. But that said, I don't take on a lot of freelance work nowadays, because I have other things that I'm working on. So I haven't been taking much freelance. If I get something, I'll either, you know, just say I'm not available, or I'll pass it on to somebody. Graphic. Do you have a world building you like to do? Do you have a world building you like to do? I mean, like a process? How do you mean? What tablet do you use? I use a Wacom Cintiq 22-inch. Hi Paul, you've got brilliant awareness. Thank you, Marek. Thank you. Yeah, very feeling good, looking crispy. How you doing, brother? How did the 3D print go? Yeah, I actually the printing thing. I actually just got. I haven't even taken it out of the packet yet. I ordered grey resin, like well before Christmas, thinking I could get that pretty soon and try to sculpt again, try to print again. The last print did go well. It's printing really well, I'd said to you about that lychee slicer, and that helped a lot. I got much better results when I started using that. But I had that clear resin and I needed to get the grey resin, so I had ordered it, but it didn't come until literally last week, and I haven't had a chance to use it. I don't like I could do the previous one, the priest reverend guy that I did, and tried to print that again, but haven't had time, so unfortunately my poor printer has been gathering dust. What am I doing? What size are those feet? Back. But yeah, I am going to get to use it again, but at the moment I'm focusing on learning Substance Painter and Substance Designer. That's my current little project to do for myself. And I'm in the middle of a sculpt with doing that, so that's why I haven't got back around to doing my bit of printing. What is it? Loads of time. Reading through our conversation here, did you get wrist pain? Oh, do you get wrist pain from all the work you do? I have in the past got wrist pain. Nothing too bad though. Nothing that caused me any major injury. Like, just it was a weird one actually. I think it was like a nerve or something. I was getting like pins and needles all the time. From like my pinky down my hand, and I sometimes get like a shooting pain. But generally no. I had up until very recently like the little padding thing that you put your wrist on and stuff, for the mouse, and then I think generally I'm all like I tend to mix up the mouse and the pen a lot, so I think not holding one for hours on end is good. To move, like change your hand position. But I had that little squishy bit that you get on your desk in front of your mouse to like, so your wrist isn't like sitting on the hard table. Because I did that for ages, and that's when I got like that numbness in my hand. And then after, once I got that, it was grand, and then the other day my dog got a hold of it and tore it to shreds, so I have to get a new one. But yeah, so no, I don't really, I wouldn't say it's a problem that I have, if you know what I mean. Tend to be alright. Emma, I actually find a clear resin fine. I just prime in black and then paint, but I guess if you don't have plans to paint it, grey is perfect. Yeah, exactly. I'm not, at the moment I'm not planning to paint them. I just want to, get some nice prints out. I'll think about painting them later, because I'd have to look up, I want to look up how to do that properly, how to make it look, get all the right tools and whatever to paint them well. Alex Gachanje. Am I saying that right? Alex Gachanje. I want to say it right. Am I saying that right? I love your workflow, Deasy. It's a super fast process and also very academic. Oh, thanks very much. Much appreciated, brother. I need to change. I have this. Like lo-fi music on in the background, which I love, but it's getting into some weird sounding noises there. They're kind of distracting me. Yeah, thanks very much. What's the main purpose of ZBrush? The main purpose of ZBrush. I wish I had a funny answer for this. Spicer, I feel like, would have a great answer for this, but the answer really is, it's a sculpting software. It's for it's like it's like a sculpting simulator, if you like. Well, simulator is the wrong word, but you know what I mean. It's made to emulate being able to sculpt with clay. Unlike modeling, like box modeling, where it's a lot slower. It's a much slower process. ZBrush is very like free flow. That's why I love it. That's why I got into 3D. I learned modeling and stuff. I did animation in college for a couple of years. I didn't finish college. I dropped out. But I did animation in college, and I did in that we did 2D and 3D animation, and we did modeling as well, and learned a little bit of rigging and a little bit of texturing. And I enjoyed modeling, but I was much more interested in 2D. Way more interested in 2D, because I didn't like the technical end of modeling. I preferred, I seen myself as an artiste, so all this technical stuff was just getting in my way. And then I discovered, and then years and years later, I discovered, years and years, a good few years later, we'll say, I discovered ZBrush, which meant you could sculpt in 3D, and I loved sculpting with clay. And never looked back. Then I got into 3D. It's funny. That's something that you should, don't be too, that's maybe could be a decent bit of advice, although they say the best advice is to never give advice. But don't be too stubborn, because I nearly was. Don't be too stubborn with what path you take as an artist or whatever. Always be open to exploring. Because if I wasn't, I probably would have never used. I was nearly too stubborn to try ZBrush, because I was like, no, I don't like 3D. I prefer doing 2D. Prefer drawing and painting and stuff. And then a friend of mine, Ado Coughlin, or Aidan Coughlin, I should say. He was like, "No, you'll love it. It's really cool. It's fun to use. It's not like normal modeling. It's like sculpting. You'd be really into it." And blah blah blah. And kept at me until eventually, he was in my house and he just installed his ZBrush. He was staying in my house for a while, and he installed ZBrush on my computer. And that was that. I gave it a try. I was like, yeah, this is actually really cool. And then I just picked some 2D, a really simple 2D thing. I think I still have that image somewhere of my first ever sculpting ZBrush. And tried it, enjoyed it. It was terrible, but I enjoyed it. And kept going from there. So always be open to trying other things, because, you know, you might miss your calling otherwise. Hopper Sean, how's it going, brother? I had the pain in my wrist the same for years from using a mouse. Never hardly use a mouse now, so it's all cleared up. Yeah. I actually know people in that I've worked with in production, so they're not artists. They organize things. They work with Excel and Word, and they requested an Intuos because they wouldn't get pains from exactly that from using the mouse. Because I've got that as well. Because your hand is it's a really awkward position to kind of hold your hand in. You're looking at that going, what way are you holding a mouse? But you know what I mean. And especially, yeah, I know you can get like a really good mouse that will negate that at least somewhat. But yeah, you can definitely I definitely find the pen better, and that's why I think that the fact that I mix between the two also helps, that my hand isn't in the same position for super long. Where's that gone? Yeah. Would you like to design technical things like car gears? I mean, that's super interesting for sure. Yeah, you mean like on a production line type of thing where you're like actually making functional parts of things? I mean, that is super interesting, and I definitely take my hat off to anyone who does it. And I'm sure I would have fun doing that. So yeah, it would be cool, but like obviously I take a character over doing something like that any day. I used to do sets for a while. I used to be a set modeler for a while, just because you know, you're in a studio and you get the short end of the stick. They've got enough character modelers there, and suddenly they're like, oh, we need you to do some sets, and before you know it, you're doing sets for like a year or 2 years. And but I same thing, I wanted to do characters and I much prefer doing characters, but I really enjoyed it at the same time. I built a much. It was interesting actually. What I liked so much is that that was a whole different thing, kind of, for me. So I had loads of stuff to learn, and I learned a lot doing that. Still would have rather just stick to the characters, but no, it was good. slot you in where they need you, exactly, yeah. I wouldn't do that again. If a company told me now, at this point in my career, we need you to do sets, I'd just refuse. I wouldn't do it. I'd leave before I'd accept it. No, that's so. You see, Emma, you're saying, I bet my first sculpt was an alien or monster. It wasn't. It was a little boy with a big head and a big smile and a paintbrush in his hand. Because I know I'm doing Hellboy here, so I'm not gonna sell this very well right now, considering. But I always preferred. I think that's why I've stuck with animation and not gone into games. Is I've always kind of preferred the more wholesome stories and all that kind of thing than like action and the typical thing that the typical kind of more, I guess you could say, boyish, although not really anymore. Girls are into comics and all that kind of stuff almost as much as guys are now. But yeah, I've always kind of preferred stuff like that. Certainly in my older years, when I was a kid, all I wanted to do was play with monsters and Batman. And I do love comics and all that stuff still. But for artwork, I don't do artwork because I'm, I think there's a lot of people out there that do want to be a sculptor because they're into games or something. Where that's not really how I came into it. Like, what I'm into in terms of content and what I like to make aren't necessarily the same thing. Believe it or not. Although I would kill to work on a Batman TV series or film that was like an animated like the old 2D animated show. Oh, I loved that thing so much. So yeah, I would kill to do that. Because for those of you who don't know, I am like obsessed with Batman since I was like 4, maybe even younger. Do you know Noman? I do indeed, yeah. Should we always work in perspective mode, or does it matter? I would recommend you work in perspective mode, yeah. Orthographic is a bit funky if you're sculpting. I was saying that earlier, so you can go into draw and bring it up to 85mm camera here rather than 50, so you don't get that when you zoom in, like it tends to skew towards you a lot. You get like a fisheye lens kind of feel. So I changed it to 85. But yeah, I would say, yeah, I do. I always work in perspective. Okay, so yeah, it's more interesting, but not as fast as 2D drawing or concepting, and sculpting is not as fast for technical modeling. Topology wise, yes, it's more interesting, but not as fast as 2D drawing for concepting, and sculpting is not as fast for technical modeling. Yeah, that's true. Both I agree with. But there's very few people that do technical models that look as good as sculpts that have been retopoed. You know, there are people who can box model so like super well, and they can make really appealing characters by just through box modeling. But you know, if you're a studio trying to find those people, it's hard enough to find good sculptors, let alone people who are box modeling that well. So ZBrush fills that gap, and very, very well. And it's not something that I'd want to change, because I much prefer sculpting a character than having to box model the whole character. So, and whether it's as fast as 2D is actually probably arguable too. By times, obviously a drawing a character, the act of drawing is quicker than sculpting for sure, but that doesn't mean that sculpting isn't fast enough, because it is. And the thing is, you can edit a sculpt a lot quicker and easier than you can edit a drawing. Usually you have to go back and redraw it, or get rid of parts and completely redraw them. Where if you want to just lengthen an arm, you just mask it and pull it down. His fingers are mad long, but I kind of like it. This is what I mean, it's pushed. This is why I like stylized more. Ah, I didn't mean to do that. Damn. But yeah, so what you're saying is correct, technically, but I don't think to say that is almost as if to say, so sculpting isn't really required. Like the ZBrush sculpting isn't really necessary, because you've all these other options that are either faster or better technically. Which you could certainly argue, but I think it will be wrong. For example, I know a lot of sculptors, and I've seen sculptors in work, and even in just recently, a lot of sculptors in production will use a base mesh, and they'll just start work from the base mesh. I always avoided that. I never really did it. Then every now and again, I'll use like the base mesh's body, but I'll always sculpt the head from scratch, using like just start with a sphere the same way I did this. And I did that recently, and one of the other modelers, so I'm the lead where I'm currently working, and one of my modelers came to me and asked, I was talking about like, oh, you got that shape so fast, and like you caught all those shapes really well, and was asking me like, how did you do that, like what was, she was kind of like, well, what are you doing different? And that's what I was doing different. I was sculpting it, not taking a base mesh and trying to push and pull it around, where base mesh has also got, you're informed already by the shapes that are in the base mesh. That's why I prefer to use primitives. So yeah, so that'll be my 5 cents on it. I'd kill to be Batman. I would also kill to be Batman. Maybe I am Batman. Hey, seen it. Nice to see you too. Thanks for joining. I'll have to think about that one. Hold on. Yeah, the early series was pretty groundbreaking. It absolutely, yeah, definitely was. Batman, that is, the early animated series. It was incredible. Do I have a favourite Batman comic storyline? Oh, that's really hard. I do really love like the Court of Owls stuff. I tend to like anything that's more like, I love, like, you know, I love the Joker, but I love anything with like the Court of Owls or even the Mad Hatter. Sometimes Scarecrow as well. The ones that get really psychological and twisted, I find those the most interesting, I guess. Do I have a favourite is hard. I don't know if I have a favourite. Nicholas Savic, hi from Serbia. Welcome, Nicola. How long did it take for you to be comfortable in ZBrush? I would say relatively quick, but it was at that time. So I had already had years of drawing and painting, so like the fundamentals of anatomy and stuff are already, you know, I had a lot of that, so I could apply that in ZBrush. If you don't have that already, it's obviously going to take you a lot longer to start to get, you know, something vaguely appealing within ZBrush, so that's gonna, I guess, slow you down, I suppose. And to get comfortable though with the software, I was probably at that time when I started using ZBrush, I was working in IT on a help desk, and I was lucky and unlucky. It was as a job, it was horrible. I hated it. But I had a lot of free time during the day while I was in there, because you only had to work while you were answering the phone, and the particular line that I was on wasn't a very busy one. So I had a lot of hours during the day, especially depending on the shift that I worked. I could have like 6 or 7 hours. I could only be actually there working for like an hour of the 8-hour shift that I had to do. And I managed to convince my manager to let me install my ZBrush in work. And I had a little Wacom bamboo super old thing, tablet, and I sculpted all the time every day. And so like when I started using ZBrush, within 6 months I had replaced my entire 2D portfolio with 3D characters. And when I started ZBrush, it was 7 months later that I got my first job in the industry as a that I've got my first job in the industry full stop, but it was as a 3D character modeler. So I was putting in if you're gonna put in 6, 7, 8 hours a day, then obviously you're gonna pick it up fast. You know what I mean? Within a month you'll be able to use, like, you'll be well able to use all the basics of ZBrush, and within like 3 or 4 months you'll be flying with it. You'll be able to do most things in ZBrush. You'll just be finding out, like, you'll just be slowly finding out like the smaller little tips and tricks and stuff. Like the type of stuff that, like, if you ever watch Michael Pavlovich, that kind of stuff, like, he knows all these little, if you use this tool in conjunction with this tool and then use this button at the end, you'll get this result. And you're like, the little things like that. Like the really finicky little clever tricks. That's the only thing you'll learn after a period of time like that. You should be able to sculpt pretty much anything. If you're gonna put in a lot less hours though, which it seems the majority of people will not put that much time in. And sometimes it's because they're too lazy, and sometimes it's because they've lots of other things going on in their lives and they don't have that many hours during the day. Especially if you're older, then having that many hours in the day free is, I don't know anyone. So but that said, you don't have to do that. I did that, but that's not the way to learn ZBrush. Do an hour a day. If you can do an hour a day like that, get up early in the morning, do an hour, get your breakfast, you'll enjoy it. Get your breakfast, sit down, watch a YouTube video, maybe a speed sculpt video on YouTube or something, and sculpt for an hour. Do that. Same thing, like a couple of months, 6 months, you'll be flying in ZBrush. And 6 months is nothing. Half-man, cool. Killing to be Batman might defeat the point of Batman. Yeah, that is a fair point. Still do it though. All your subtools in dynamic mode. No, some of them are. I don't have like a hard fast rule. If I need to sculpt in shapes that there is not enough topology there for, I'll start adding subdivisions. If not, then I won't. I'll just keep it in dynamic until I do need to. Where am I? How can I make a normal map for heavy models because UV braked when I decimate the model? Alright, so just go back before you decimated. So you've got your decimation master. And what you need to do is, also if you're using poly paint, you need to click both of these, but you need to hit keep UVs and then decimate. And if you're using the poly paint as a texture, then you can keep the poly paint on as well. You can also just export the poly paint before you decimate, but yeah. So I always keep these two on. Once you decimate and you have keep UVs on, your UVs will stay exactly, will be fine. They'll be perfect. That's what I use all the time. For anything in my portfolio is decimated. I don't. Like I do retopology and stuff in work, But everything in my portfolio, which I would not recommend by the way, is all decimated, and that's how I do it. And I always start with poly paint, so I'll keep the UVs and the poly paint, and then I'll decimate it and bring everything out and use the multi-map exporter to bring out the textures, and plug them in Arnold, do my rendering, and that is how you do it. I need to get like, hold on, let's get I want to get like an ape. Picture of an ape up here. No, I need a gorilla. Will be better. Oh, there's a gorilla with no arms. Hairless. Should be interesting. Oh my god, they're a big animal. Okay. Maybe he needs more wrist. No, that's it. I just realised as well, this hand has to be like bigger than this one. So this hand has to be like the big rock hand. So the hand's going to be huge. But I kind of like it. I'm finding it fun. Thanks Courtney125, appreciate it. Do you think ZBrush will ever get a rigging plugin to simplify posing models similar to Maya? Possibly, yeah. Yeah, I certainly wouldn't rule it out. I haven't heard of it that been worked on, but yeah, I can totally see them making a tool like that. It would be really cool. Although, yeah, no, it would be really cool. For me, I always like, I'll pose like when it's like this. I'll pose at this state, you know. When things are in separate pieces, and then when it's in the pose, then I'll sculpt into it. But that said, like, you've got clothes and stuff on it that really complicates it too. So it would most certainly be a really useful tool. There's no doubt about it. I'm almost tempted actually to make his legs slightly too small. No, that'd be too much. Thoughts cross my mind though. Joyful Games, Mike Pavlovich knows each and every button in ZBrush and is super fast. Yeah, totally. He's got the whole kit and caboodle figured out. Couldn't help but think sculpting easy peasy with all Deasy would be a funny tagline. It absolutely would. I think I need to write that down so I can remember that. I'm going to say that to Kyle. That is fantastic. And I'm ashamed that I didn't think of it. I'm jealous. that I didn't think of it. There you go. That's getting put up there. That is absolutely beautiful. Thank you very much, Bilbo Baggins. Oh yeah, just made better by the name. Okay. Hopper Sean. Oh no, wait. Oh, you're answering. Okay, there's a conversation happening here that I missed. I have a question about UV and normal. I'm thankful if you help me. Is that the one I answered earlier? Oh. Okay. How can you make a normal map for heavy models because UV break? Okay, yeah. So that, and then you can use the multi-map exporter as well. Sorry, I kind of trailed off on that one. And you can see there, like the last one I did, I baked ambient occlusion texture from polypaint and the normal, and that's from the decimated mesh, and it works perfectly. You don't even have to, like, if you dynameshed it or whatever the case may be, you just got your high poly. Once you UV it with the UV master, then you can bake all of these off and export them, and then once you decimate with that button pressed, you'll be fine. You can bring your decimated model into whatever you need and just plug the maps in then, and it'll work. Just make sure it's always on by default, but flip V here, because otherwise your maps tend to come out upside down. If you go into like the texture map down here or anything, like you can create new from polypaint here, and you have to make sure it stays in here. You need to clone it, and then it will appear in here, and then you can export it from here. But you have to, if you're going to do that, you have to make sure here to flip V before you do it, because you have to do it manually. And you can also say like the resolution of your image and stuff. Like you can see there, because I was doing the whole body, and you'll probably, if you're doing a whole body in one UDIM, then you'll probably want to export at 8K, because it's one texture for the entire body. So if you've got any detail like skin pores and stuff like that, then if it's at 4K won't be enough, it'll be pixelated. What else did I miss here? Dream Project. Okay, Dream Project. Turbo Tsunami is asking, Dream Project to work on besides Batman. That's a great question. I would love to work on a Hellboy series. Like, I would love to see this kind of thing in an animated series. I think it would be slick. Maybe a Batman Hellboy crossover series. Yeah. What else would I like to? Anything with Guillermo del Toro. Oh, you've put me on the spot. I feel like there's loads of stuff, and I can't think of anything right now. Oh, there's loads of stuff and I can't think of anything. Alright, I feel like there might be still some confusion on the whole decimation thing, possibly, so maybe I'll talk about that for a second. Before I do, awesome. Oh yeah. Thanks, Tahadin. Appreciate it. Bilbo Baggins, that was really funny. Oh, Yulia, welcome back. Yeah, I'm definitely using that. I have to find a reason to use that. I will invent something just to use that. It's Sculpting easy peasy with Paul Deasy. Yeah, right now I'm waking up at 5:30 so I can put in my couple hours before work. I like it. That is the way to do it. I I used to be a real night owl, and once I changed, oh god, I mean maybe it isn't better for everyone. I don't know, but it is. It was so much better for me that I can't understand how it wouldn't be better for everyone, unless like there's a specific circumstance, in which case you can't. You know, if you were like work a late shift or something. But yeah, I absolutely love. And you're up in the morning before everyone else. You hear the sun come up, the birds start chirping and all that. It's just better than working in the middle of the night and waking up, looking. Yeah, there you go. And working up or waking up the following morning in bits. I just or late for work or whatever the case may be. It's just not a way to do it. The way I actually, what's important for me, because I need sleep. I'm not naturally a morning person. Which I know contradicts what I've been telling you here, but I have, like, the trick for me is not getting up early, it's going to bed early. Go to bed early. If you can go to bed early, then getting up in the morning isn't bad. And I mean early. I mean like once this stream is over, it'll be 10 p.m. here, and I will go straight to bed, in the hopes that I fall immediately asleep. Because if I'm going to get up at 6, I need my 8 hours, and that is 8 hours. So you know, if I fall asleep tonight at 11:30, 12 o'clock, there's no way I'm getting up at 6. I won't be able to. I'll wake up in the morning in pain from the tiredness. So I'm not like just one of those people who's just able to jump out of bed. I'm very much the opposite. I need a bit of geo here. Times it. I feel like I actually got a decent amount done for this stream. I'm pretty alright with the. Been slowing down the last little bit, but generally it's not a bad amount of work for an hour and a half. It's alright. Certainly have no complaints. That's yeah. Space Dave, why are the arms so big? Laugh my ass off. Are you not a fan, Space Dave? They're big because he's Hellboy, and Hellboy has a bit of like a gorilla-y vibe to him. So I'm playing into that with the proportions and making his arms intentionally massive. Because he's got that other like rock hand thing going on, and so I kind of just want to push those proportions, see where it takes me. And yeah, that is why his arms are so large. Paul, do you read? Oh, look at all these guys. Okay. I keep falling behind on the chat. Paul, do you re-topo your characters or leave it like that? My personal work when I'm just doing sculpts from myself, I never re-topo. I always just decimate it and that's it. But I also re-topo all the time because I do that. I have to re-topo for production characters and work. So it's kind of why I don't do it with my own characters. Nice style, thanks Single Rider 1. Francisco Agustin Leal Prieto. Is that, did I say that almost kind of right maybe? It's not in English. I was so ready to answer that. I say make his leggies. I thought that said leggies. His legs. It's a double G. I thought I seen it white. His. Let's go with leggies though. Tiny. His character design has tiny legs. Yeah, that's kind of where my head was at. Yeah, let's try it. Since you said it, let's give it a shot. Could be cool. Oh. Yeah, like I'm kind of digging that. I don't hate that as much as I maybe should. That way he skipped every leg day ever. Yeah, well, he also, like, because leg day adds thickness. His legs are clearly, like, he was born with not normal proportions. You know what I'm saying? There we go. No, I don't want to do that. I want to do that. Oh yeah, the decimation thing. Okay. So I'm going to show you this. This is how I take my characters from ZBrush into Maya for rendering. Right. So say this is my sculpt. And it's painted red and blue, purple. And let's just hold on actually before we do that. So it's got 5 subdivision levels and it's painted sorts of funky colors. Okay. So this is my character. Subdivision 1, unwrap. Go back up. Now it's unwrapped. Decimation master. Keep UVs on. Use and keep polypaint on. You can pre-process and then decimate, or you can come down and pick one of the presets. So let's say it's 35k. No, definitely doesn't. Either way, once you click one of these, it pre-processes as a part of this. So you can, if it's not right, you can just go in here and decimate the big J's out of it. Okay, so you should see, there you go, you can actually see when you keep this on, when it decimates, you can actually see where it's kept the UVs. So now I can export this model. When it's, for this you can just export an OBJ, but usually with a character I'll export an FBX, and then you can go, I can't see it, multi-map exporter, and pick whatever you need here, and you can hit subtools, set the, and that'll send all your subtools. Set your resolution, whatever you need, and in this case the last one I did was a full body because I didn't have it across multiple UDOMs, so I needed the 8K map, where if you had it across multiple UDOMs you could have it, you know, at 4K maps or whatever, so, or 2, whatever. Create your maps, bring your model into whatever you're bringing it into, and plug in your, you know, apply your shaders and plug in your maps, and that is it. Boop. Hey. That green kind of goes with that red. I like it a lot. So he's missing actually. Times it. You have enough time to add in. I need to do his hair properly. There you go. Just need something that doesn't have a subdivision level on it, so I can drag out this and then I'll just separate it. Like here. I should have done that. Geometry. Actually, a trick. I'm gonna cut off the end. I'll probably even close holes on it. If you're doing like a tube, if you cut off both ends, it means when you Z-remesh, the edge flow won't like loop around and cause spirals. It'll just give you, generally speaking, loops all the way up. Right. Z-remesh, keep groups, Z-remesh. Yeah, that's fine. It'll do. I can even use the Z modeler to go in and like remove a bunch of loops. To lower the poly count. That works too. Has it like floating there. Now we'd have to do something a bit more finished with it, but for now have one of those moments where I'm trying to see through my hand. And there now, in the render, there's a little opportunity to stick a little light in there, give some bounce light in the face. I like the shorter legs. I do. I dig it. Yes, do Batman next and then create a Batman versus Hellboy diorama. I'm absolutely all up for that. There's actually Loftman is the guy who did the 2D on that one, and there's a Batman there as well, so I could absolutely do that, and that would be badass. I may actually do that. In a Batman Hellboy series, who would be the antagonist villain, or would you want to create a new one or put Batman versus Hellboy? I mean, Batman versus Hellboy is interesting in a way, but it doesn't necessarily work, because eventually I can see like Batman thinking Hellboy is dangerous and needs to be sent back to hell or whatever. You know what I mean? I can see his logic to that. And then doing the whole like Batman Superman thing where he's like eventually Hellboy says his ma's name or whatever, and Batman's like, oh, actually you're not so bad. So I don't know if that story would work out, but one of them would have to kill the other for that story to be interesting, probably. Like the Dark Knight Returns. Even though I was gonna say spoiler alert, but if you haven't seen that by now, it's really your own beef. Batman doesn't actually die at the end. I had previously was better proportioned. Go back to what you had. I don't know. I think it's subjective. Let's see, hold on. This is going to become designed by committee, which is never good. Okay. I'll go back to this. Yeah, see, now I do like that as well. I liked it, the short legs, but now I do like that too. Well, this is where I need to not look at it for a while and come back to it and decide then. I would say it's subjective though. There's no like, this is where it's like there's nothing to say that design proportion should not work. You know what I mean? What wouldn't work What wouldn't work is if you create the same size again and again. So like if say you made from the shoulders to the bottom of the rib cage this size, and then the bottom of the rib cage to the end of the crotch the same size, and then the bottom of the crotch to the knees the same size, and that to the end of the foot the same size. Then you could be like, yeah, for sure that's wrong, because you're making the same length again and again. Where you want to be dynamic, so you need to switch that up. So the fact that it was shorter, it still wasn't doing that. So like design wise, I don't see it's not a case of longer is better because short is wrong. So it's a subjective thing. I do like this, but I don't know, I feel like the short legs kind of have a little bit more, give them a little bit more, they what's the word I'm looking for, they subvert expectation better. So in design or in art in general, a big part of it is not wrong, just different, exactly. So there's well proportioned legs make them look more powerful. That's still arguable, because gorillas have tiny little back legs, and yet there's nothing that doesn't look powerful about a gorilla, and that's kind of the direction there. And I feel like that was potentially part of the direction of his original design, potentially, at least. You know what I mean? He's got that, knuckles are nearly dragging along the ground, you know what I mean? Oh, Johnny Rampant. I'm a fan of your work, man. It's great to have you in. And short legs, there you go. If it's good enough for Johnny Rampant, it's good enough for me. I think I had mentioned you recently in a previous stream, because I can't remember how it came up. Oh, I think I was just talking to people. Someone was asking me about when I started using ZBrush, and one of the first ever tutorials I watched was one of your tutorials on like the kind of African looking warrior, and it was on the original Cube Brush, Mark Brunet's original website before he turned it into the big kind of marketplace type thing. It was like it just had tutorials and things like that on it. And that tutorial was one of the first ones I watched. I had like the premium membership thing for that website, so I was able to watch the full thing, and I watched the whole thing. It was awesome. It was really cool. So yeah, that's chuffed to see you join. What time are we at? Oh, we're after 10. I always do this. My argument is based on the 8-head rule. Superheroes ought to have 9-head proportion, so 8-head will be understatement. Okay. I wouldn't disagree with that. I wouldn't say, a 9-head superhero proportion, that's fine. Okay, well actually, okay, let's see what we can do actually, before I do this. Let's see safe. So about 7.5. That's where he's at right now. And although that there's 8 heads and a superhero 9 heads, I get that. But I would never take a rule like that and just say I have to do that. If I do a superhero, 9 heads has to be, because it doesn't. So, yeah, I mean, and at the end of the day, it's your art too. So, whether it's me doing it or like I could be telling you, no, I think you should make the legs smaller or something, but you don't want to make the legs smaller because it doesn't fit the vision that you have for it. So then don't, you know. But I don't know, I'm feeling the big arms, the kind of gorilla proportions, for me, I think is cool. Especially because he's not... That 9 head proportion thing works better for a character like Superman, who's got this, like, you know, Boy Scout chest up, kind of looking up into the sky with an eagle behind him, cape blowing in the wind. Hellboy is not one of those people. He's not one of those characters. He's a misunderstood, monstrous anti-hero, you know. So I don't know. It wouldn't be wrong to put him as 9 heads, but I don't think it's wrong to not either. But that's just me. His arms are already huge and out of proportion. Making legs shorter would make him look more ape than human. Exaggerating the arm is enough to sell the gorilla look. Yeah, I don't know. Again, I don't think he looks like a gorilla, but I'm going for it. I like to push the boat out. What can I say? I like to go. Yeah, I'd rather go too far than not far enough. Right, design wise, long legs will convey. I love this. I love a little back and forth. It's great. It's nice. Design wise, long legs will convey that he might be a great runner and very athletic. Hellboy is a brute force guy, so you emphasize the strength by making his legs smaller. Yeah, I would agree with that. And giving weight, like think of the Hulk. He has small legs, relatively. Relative, especially to his arms. So yeah, you're putting the weight where the emphasis should be, you know, because it means if that's why I was thinking there a minute ago, maybe I need to make. So what I was thinking was similarly to a character like the Hulk. Actually, that's actually, I don't know why I didn't think of that example earlier. Having less of a taper in the forearm, and it gives that feeling like his hands are big mallets, you know what I mean, that when they come down they're just big mallets, and there's not really a taper, so his wrists are like as thick as his entire fist. You can see that like on characters like the Hulk. And again, like I'm not saying so I'm making his hands thick because that's the way a character like this should be, but it's just a design choice that I think is cool and works well. I enjoy that design choice on the likes of the Hulk or Popeye, and so I like to implement it here, to use that to emphasize what I'm trying to emphasize, you know. Yeah, I wouldn't get too caught up in like in rules necessarily, you know. They're, as Barbosa would say, they're more like guidelines. If you can get that reference, okay, thumbs up to you. Can you draw? Wait, can you draw drip Squidward? Oh, can you draw drip Squidward? You're gonna have to help me with that one. 7.5 is the right humor proportion. See, and I didn't even try to measure that. That just happened that way. That sounded really. How long have you been using ZBrush, Paul? I think it's like 6 years. 6-7 years. Ages. I can't really remember. Ages. Are you gonna do that oversized stone hand? Yes, I'm gonna do the stone hand. Yeah. Hellboy is my dad. This just looks like nice. Man, your dad's ripped. Dad's a big man. I'm new to ZBrush. Could you please suggest how to begin my learning journey? Yeah, so I would say take something really simple. Find like a 2D concept from a good artist. Someone, at least to begin with, someone that you know is somewhat reputable. So you know you're working from good design, or at least have a good chance of it. Something simple, you know, nothing with mad crazy hair or anything, just something nice and simple, and sculpt it, and watch any YouTube video just about, you know, beginners ZBrush. Type that into YouTube, you'll get tons of stuff. You'll learn the basics there, how to turn the model around, what brushes are important, move, Damien standard, pinch, that kind of thing. How to use a mask, how to like the transform tool. It's a handful of tools really that you use 95% of the time. So, you know, it won't take long to get the knack of them, and then you can start creating things, and learn by creating things is the way I would suggest to do it, because creating things that you want to create and have fun, because that way there's like that constant reward to learning it, so that you want to come back. Because the trick to learning ZBrush is enjoying it, really, because if you don't and you're trying to force yourself, in my experience, most people can't keep that up. They can't force themselves to keep coming back. So you have to do it in a way that you enjoy it, you know. That's why even like if you do go out and buy a tutorial or whatever, that's great. You can do that, and look, if you want to, a lot of people will recreate what the person in the tutorial created. I would always suggest to apply it to something else. Again, keeping it simple, but apply it to something else if you can, so you can still feel like an ownership of it. And as well, if you put something from a tutorial in your portfolio or whatever, that's all it is. It's just everyone is just gonna see it and go, oh yeah, that's from that tutorial that loads of people posted. Like there's a substance painter tutorial where they do like a blue lamp, and the amount of times I've seen that blue lamp in people's portfolios. But look, if it gets the job done, if you learn it, do it whatever way you need to do it, whatever way makes you feel comfortable. Because the important part is that you keep coming back, because that's how you're going to learn it in the long run. That's how you're going to get really good at it in the long run. So you keep using it. I better wrap this bad boy up. Rules make your work more believable. That is true, but when you're applying rules, you need to think. Okay, so when you're starting out, you need to learn the rules. once you've learned the rules and you've a good understanding of all the rules, then not only should you break them, but you will want to break them. Eventually, if you just keep following the rules, and I speak for myself, but I think I speak for most artists, honestly, but I'm open to being wrong about that. But I feel like I speak for most artists. If you just try to keep following rules, like proportion rules and so on, I think your work will suffer from it and it will become a bit boring, because you have to follow the same thing again and again. So whatever character you do, if it fits whatever category it fits into, it has to go with the corresponding set of rules with it every time. If you're going to be that stringent with rules, I agree that you should follow rules, but as in, so I followed rules here. I didn't break every rule. I'm following a lot of rules. Like, I didn't place the tricep up at the back of his neck. I placed the tricep where it should be. The lats, the traps, the glutes, they're relative to each other where they should be. Pushing the proportions is part of doing stylized, and if you always follow pre-existing rules, one, you're never going to be able to come up with something truly different, and what you're hindering is your ability to supersede people's expectations. So, for example, Andy Warhol took a tin of soup and made it really big. Now, why did he do that? Because it seems like, well, that's silly. Like, on face value, you know, your average person and a lot of artists would look at that and think, well, that's silly. But the point was the idea behind it, not the tin of soup itself necessarily. So the point was, he said that you should play on people's expectations, and in one way to do that is to change the scale of it. So take something that everyone knows is tiny and make it massive. So, and that's just a general design rule. You know, that's why Star Wars takes, like, you know, knights and like medieval times, and then takes a futuristic team and mashes them together. It's to play on people's expectations. So if you always stay with the rules, I would say you're going to hinder that a little bit, you know what I mean? And potentially a lot, depending on how stringent you're going to be with the rules. So yeah. Like, and again, I'm not like, the Hulk is another example of a pre-existing very popular design that has big long arms and small legs, you know. And in a lot of cases, Hellboy himself is designed that way as well. Not in the feature films, obviously, but like in all the comics and cartoons, he often has these tiny little stick thin legs and big arms. So I'm not necessarily breaking rules, bending some, using some different ones more than anything, you know. Yeah. So that'd be my side on that. Breaking the rules is what separates us from the machines. Yeah, exactly. Okay. I'm thinking from experience, you need to know the limits of your design decisions, otherwise your work feels wrong and people will not know what makes it wrong unless one is trained. That's also true. I completely agree with that. You can break things. So I've said before, something that I'll talk about sometimes is when you're doing stylized characters, you want to push proportions, and sometimes I'll use the phrase pulling proportions, as in you're going the wrong way, where you're going too far, let's say, outside of the rules or outside of the fundamentals or whatever, that you're not making something that you're not taking someone's expectations and expanding on them. You're taking someone's expectations, so where, let's say, where the eyes are relative to the ears, and you put them in a place that now they're so pushed, or in the way I would put it, pulled, that it doesn't look like an interesting design choice. It now looks broken. It now looks like, I think you put their ears in the wrong place. Like it doesn't feel like, you know what I mean? Which that's a harder thing, I think, to explain how to do, because there's a lot more ways to do it wrong than there is to do it right. So yeah, it's very interesting subject though. I'd love to actually, there's another stream I do sometimes with two of the lads. That'd be a great topic. I need to take that down. But I need to wrap this up, but I appreciate the little back and forth there, Alex. I like a nice little discussion. And yeah, Miranda jumped in as well. Fair play. A few others. I like that. I'd love a bit more of that. I enjoy that. I feel like I missed something there. No, maybe not. Not everyone has sent portions yet. Sculpting I never did. I think I should go back and fix them. Yeah, going back and doing your old sculpts can be fun. It depends. Most of them might already be working, and they just putting on personal work. It's best to just start and have fun while doing it. Exactly. Just enjoy it is by far the most important thing. When you're starting out, and that way you keep coming back, and you'll just naturally get better. So, whatever you do, make sure you're enjoying it. And I think that's a good note to leave it on. And I was supposed to do a Valentine's based sculpt tonight, but I didn't have enough time to like get a decent design or whatever together, and I'd said that I would do this. So I think in 2 weeks time I'm going to try come up with something that's kind of fun and playful, something funny, maybe like a play on Valentine's rather than just doing that's what I'm trying to. It's how much time I get to come up with something interesting, it'll be another thing. So hopefully I'll see you there anyway. So 2 weeks, Wednesday night, same time. So hopefully I'll see you guys there again, and it was lovely chatting with you tonight. And